Hello, this is Aditi from Raising World Children, and today we have Liz Wilcox, and she is an RV entrepreneur, and she has a website called the Virtual Campground, where she is bringing modern nomads together. Hi, Liz.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Everyone should know that Liz and I met in a class we did together, and I've been so fascinated with the life she leads because she lives in an RV, and I'm sure it's so interesting. So, Liz, tell us, how did you come about living in an RV?
It's a really interesting story. First of all, I should say my husband's in the Army, and we were moving from upstate New York to Alabama. And a couple days before the move, the deal on our house that we were trying to buy here in Alabama fell through. And my
Oh,
husband had always joked about being in a camper, moving in and buying one. And I said, no way, you're 6'5". We can't live in a camper. And
okay.
then on the way down, we had nowhere to live. We were going to stay in a hotel room until we found something to rent. I thought, maybe we could live in a camper. And so I rented one off Airbnb.com just to stay in overnight on the way to Alabama. And I thought, wow, this is a lot nicer than I thought it was. And this is totally doable. And I love the small space. I was still kind of suffering from postpartum depression. So cleaning house all day long was really depressing for me, not something I wanted to do. And so when I tried out the camper for one night, I just fell in love. And less than 2 weeks later, we had the camper and we've been living in it for almost a year. And I just really love it.
Wow, that's an incredible story. You never know where life takes you, doesn't it? A decision, and then it just falls through, and something amazing comes out of it.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, we were moving about a year ago, and I mean, even the day we moved, I never would have imagined I'd be living in a camper or trying to, open up my own website and be an entrepreneur. And it's just crazy how if you open up your mind to those options, how the world opens itself up to you.
Yes, life constantly changes. So I'm sure, I mean, as we all feel scared to live in an RV, I mean, I myself think that it must be so difficult, and I'm sure there must be challenges. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, like I said, we moved into the RV very quickly. Um, I think it was within 8 days of deciding, yes, we're going to do this. We had found our RV. We knew nothing about it other than a couple late night hotel internet searches where I found a huge community online of people that were actually doing it. And so I
Okay.
thought, well, hey, yeah, I can do it. So we moved in and the RV is about 11 years old, so it's a little outdated. And we thought, oh, we need to replace the carpet because we have a dog and a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started pulling up the carpet, and of course, there was water damage. We didn't know what we were doing, how we were going to fix it. I'm very blessed that I have a very handy husband. He was able to fix the water damage, find the leak. It was crazy though. And with a toddler, you can only imagine. I was trying to help, but anytime I helped, she was clinging to me
Yeah.
and saying, no, no, play with me, or wanting to play with the tools I was using. And so that was a real challenge. Our RV is very large for an RV. It has 3 slides, which are when you're driving down the road, everything's in. And then when you pull out, you have slides that can come out to expand
Okay.
your space. So
Okay.
ours is very large. It is about 380 square feet. And I think the average RV might be 200. I
Okay.
don't know. Don't quote me on that. But ours is very large. And so even with having a large RV, it was such a struggle. We had to pull out our entire kitchen and put it on the other side of the RV to get to the wall that needed replacing.
Okay.
So we didn't have a kitchen, nothing like that. And we've been doing RV renovation ever since, replacing the floor, painting, and it's just been a huge challenge with a toddler. That's why it's taken us 9 months
Wow.
to almost finished. I'm trying to think of another. Another is when you get kind of in a, let's say, heated debate with your partner, there's nowhere to go. Your child is right there. You have to watch your temper. You have to watch your words so closely. Your child is right there. I remember just a few weeks ago, my husband and I were talking about the RV renovation and saying it's got to get done. And, you know, he wants to do it this way, but I want to do it this way. And we started going back and forth. And of course, things were escalating. And, you know, I wasn't even noticing that I had started to raise my voice, but it wasn't until my daughter came up to me and grabbed my face and said, "No, mommy." So when you know, are in those moments with your spouse where tensions are high, there's nowhere for the vibes to go. So your children are really going to feel them. Yeah. So it really causes you to solve your problems and be open to communicating and resolving those conflicts very quickly so that you don't affect the young, impressionable minds inside your home.
So, but this is good advice for any time. I mean, even when the same thing happens at home, I can see my kids instantly reacting to it, and we are like, no, this is not something that you need to be involved in. You need to go into another room. And, you know, this is just something natural that happens when, you know, parents talk or any two people talk. But this is such a wonderful thing that you bring up about like carpet renovations or renovations with kids. These are issues that would come up with any, you know, in any situation. It is not particular just to RVs. I mean, if anyone's renovating with young kids, I'm sure it is very difficult. And it is not like RV life seems completely, unique in that sense. You know, it's similar to life in houses, you know. So what is completely unique to RV living that you would feel that, you know, let's talk about some weird questions that people ask you. Like, does anyone ask you weird stuff?
Yeah, I mean, people ask, like, I'm potty training and our toilet is different. It has a foot pedal. It doesn't have a flush.
Okay.
And it's really funny. I've noticed in the last couple weeks since we started, when I go with my daughter somewhere, she always tries to flush the toilet with her foot, which is hilarious to me. And I was telling my friend that the other day, and she didn't think it was very funny. She was like, you know, she thought, oh, you know, I could tell in her eyes, she was like, I cannot believe you live in an RV. Also, people ask about weather, because I talk about us spending so much time outside.
Okay.
And people say, well, what do you do when it's hot? Like right now I'm outside. Yeah. It's probably about, I don't know, 95 degrees out.
Wow.
And that is a challenge because we don't want to be inside. Being inside of, you know, less than 400 square feet all day long is a challenge. My daughter gets, I guess, bored easily with it. You know, there's nothing new to look at, especially with the renovations. It's kind of chaotic some days in there. So we go outside. So there are days where I have to leave the house. This morning, you know, you just have to go find some things to do. Like we spend a lot of time at the library. We spend a lot of time at parks. We spend a lot of time at the pool. It's just, you have to get more creative, and not that that's also another thing that's like extremely unique, but it does come up, I think, a lot more often in the RV, especially some of my RV friends that have smaller homes and a lot more children. They have to get very creative very quickly in new places and find, you know, where's the nearest library, where's the nearest public pool, where's the nearest warm place if they're somewhere cold. So I think that is something that happens a lot more frequently because it does get pretty hot in the RV. We have extra air conditioners, and it gets pretty cold in the winter also.
Okay, but that's a sign of a good parent to be able to find quick fixes or solutions to any problems that you face as with your kids. So that's wonderful of you. How do you think all this affects her? Like, what do you hope that she learns out of this experience that you're having with her?
Well, when I first became a parent, I thought I was going to be that mother that scheduled everything. I wanted my child to be super creative and super talented. And I felt like when I was growing up, I never had those opportunities. I grew up in a very rural area. We were very poor. And so I wanted to, give her the world. And since moving into the RV, I realized I still want those things. I want her to be as exposed as possible to different talents and things that she can play around with and learn who she is. But I found that doing it in a much slower, organic way is a lot better. I've noticed that, while we're not going to classes like, mommy and me gymnastics or dance classes, things like that, we don't do that anymore. We spend a lot of time outside. We spend a lot of time getting creative, going to places, but not in a structured way. I find that she's becoming more creative. She's making up stories about things she sees outside, and I find that I can easily see what's important to her. Like, I can easily see she relates mommy, daddy as a family, because everything, all her stories she makes up are about mommy, daddy, baby. And
Yes.
saw a grasshopper and she said, "Oh, that's the daddy," and she picked up a leaf and pretended it was the baby. And very social, I've noticed, with the RV park. We live in the RV park. That's where I am right now. And people come in and out all day long, every day. And I've noticed she's very social compared to other children her age. She goes up to people and introduces herself, which I think is hard for some grown people to do. She says, "Hi, I'm Chelsea. What's your name?" Or, at the playground, "Hi, I'm Chelsea. Want to play?" And whether they say yes or no, she'll leave them alone. Or if she's feeling particularly excited, she'll follow them. And I just love that she's so unafraid, because when I was a child, I was a very anxious, nervous person. You would never know now.
No.
And so it's been my main goal to make sure she, feels that, only in extreme situations. I want her to be relaxed. And I found living, as you can see, there's lots of trees back here, living in this slower pace, kind of simple life, that she's opening up a lot easier than other children I see. And I absolutely love that. It makes all this crazy RV renovation and no personal space totally worth it, because I just love seeing her creativity shine.
Of course, it's wonderful when you're struggling through something, and there are phases through life, and your kids are coming out stronger by it. It's wonderful, and her being social is a wonderful testimony to what you're doing, because I feel nowadays a lot of times you see kids who are hesitant to say hello, or maybe it's just because of I have really no clue why that is, but I wonder what it is that drives them to become more and more closed as time passes by, rather than becoming open and experiencing new things.
Yeah, I wonder also, and I noticed even today, I was at the park this morning with some friends, and there is a part in the park, it's a ladder, but it turns like this, and many of the mothers absolutely hate it. I hear it every time I go to the park. "Oh, I wish they would take that thing down, because there's a big gap. It's awfully high. It's above my head. I mean, it's probably 5.5 feet tall."
Okay.
And today Chelsea was climbing on it, and a friend's daughter came up who's about 5 years old, and she said, "Chelsea's on the ladder." And I started laughing, and I said, "I know, isn't she doing awesome?" And she would look at me like, is she supposed to be on that? I said, it's okay. I taught her how to get on it. And I think that's really important, to teach your kids to be unafraid, to teach them to be problem solvers. And the playground is the perfect place for that. I love living in this campground because I can let her explore her world without being right here.
Yes.
You know, I can see her for, yards and yards, and I don't have to be right there. This is a very open community. I can see a half-mile down the road. Of course, I'm not letting her get that far from me, but I can see her if she's, a few paces ahead of me, if she wants to run ahead. The roads are gravel, so no one's speeding by. Everyone goes really slow. Everyone knows who Chelsea is, knows where she lives, protects her, and I just absolutely love that. But my main point is to teach your kids to be problem solvers and to teach them to know that they can do it for themselves and they don't need, that handicap.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Of course it does. So RV travel is usually associated with, RV living is usually associated with traveling. So do you travel at all, or are you like staying in one place? Like, how does it work?
Right. I'm actually stationary right now. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, my husband's in the Army, so he has about 13 or 14 more months on his contract.
Okay.
And so we are stationary right now. We travel, we do road trips, we do long trips also, but not in the RV right now.
Okay.
In a few months, we will probably have a new RV that we can travel with. The one that we own right now weighs 16,000 pounds dry, and I drive a Ford Focus, so there's no way I'm moving it. But one of the reasons that I've fallen in love with the RV life is the fact that I can one day travel and that we will travel. And that's why I became this RV entrepreneur, as they call it, because I wanted to make sure that I would have an income for the road. I have a lot of friends, or I've met a lot of friends now that are traveling with their family. And I think all the things that I've talked about teaching your kid to be creative and to be a problem solver and teaching them to be social and letting them know it's okay to be social and branch out a little bit from the family. I think that's only going to be amplified when we start traveling.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that they call like themselves like unschoolers or world schoolers, and they say over the years they've noticed their children just opening up and just being the most creative version of themselves. And what you would think of kids that might do that, like, oh, they're weird, they're socially awkward, they're not going to be able to know how to act in the real world. I feel like traveling actually does the opposite. It opens them up to so many new opportunities, good and bad. You're going to have bad neighbors, but you're also going to have good neighbors. You're going to be somewhere that you might have expected it to be amazing and it turns out to be garbage. And I think that teaches the children to be very flexible and diversified, while also strengthening them, because they've had those experiences and they continue to have them from an early age.
So what are your travel destinations that you hope to go to soon?
I feel like sometimes I get so laser focused on my website and my business and my books that I forget about the travel. That's kind of one of the catch-22s of being an RV entrepreneur. But I think, and this is what got me most excited about, we could travel in this thing, wow.
Yes.
Is the idea of staying at the Grand Canyon for as long as I want to. I mean, some people stay weeks, some people spend a couple months in the area.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the idea, this romantic idea I have in my mind of just living at the Grand Canyon for a month or two just sounds so amazing to me. I've traveled a lot, but I haven't traveled too much to the west.
Okay.
So I've seen New England, I've seen the Midwest, I'm in the South now, but I've never seen anything like the Grand Canyon, and I just cannot wait. I am so excited. That whole Moab and Utah and all the natural or national parks in Utah. I'm so excited. A lot of people talk about the Pacific Highway going up the coast of California. There's a really big influencer in my niche, Heath and Alyssa Paget. They say they've been to all 50 states and they still travel. They've been traveling, I think, a little over 3 years. And they say that's the coolest thing they've ever done in their whole lives. So I cannot wait to do it with my family too, and let my daughter experience all these new things and do it with my husband as well. It's going to be so awesome.
So what is the top 3 things you would tell someone who's considering renting an RV or living in an RV? What would you tell them to keep in mind when they do that?
Only 3 things.
Okay, you can go. We can do as many as you can think of.
I would say to always remember that you're not alone. RVing can be lonely, especially when you're traveling. It's such a new way. Well, it's not really a new way of thinking, but it's become, with the internet, of course, everything seems new, that have been old ideas. But anyway, it's such a new way of thinking that a lot of people in the real world don't understand. Like, oh, well, when are you coming back? Do you have a job? How much money are you making? How can you be lonely? You're on vacation. And of course, like, oh, I want to live at the Grand Canyon, but really I'll be working a lot. Yes. And my husband as well, to continue our travels. So I would just say to people considering this lifestyle or maybe interested in it, that if you do get lonely, you're never alone. There's a huge online community, and living in the campground for almost last year, it's really shown me that neighbors can be neighborly. I mean, I always say Mr. Rogers lied to us, like neighborhoods stink. I didn't know my neighbors. I used to live in a townhouse, so we literally shared walls. And I didn't even know my neighbors' names. And since moving into the campground, I hear life stories every day of new people. And
that's nice.
So if you're thinking of it or if you're doing it, you're never alone, and you can't forget that. So the second thing, I would say, I literally just wrote about this yesterday. So I'm trying to think. Stay positive. There are days, weeks, months that it's gonna suck. It's just like regular life. I'm not on vacation. These people aren't on vacation. This is their life. And if you just stay positive and like in any sort of life, that there's gonna be a finish, and the grass will be greener someday, then you're good. Like with this RV renovation, there are times where I just want to rip my hair out. I just want to burn down the RV and move into an apartment, and just forget it ever happened.
Yeah.
But I remember why I'm doing it, how it's strengthening my family, and, not to mention how much money I'm saving living in a campground in southern Alabama. And it makes it that much better. And another thing I would say, you really have to keep you have to value the experience over a lot of stuff. Okay. You cannot have a lot of stuff in your RV. I have always considered myself like a minimalist before that was even a word. Like, I thought I made that word up until I got online. Okay. When I was in college, I lived in a hotel room, but the hotel room, hang on, can you hear that? Yeah. It's a tractor driving by. They're doing a lot of renovations at this campground. I'm sorry. So I used to live in a hotel room, but it was small, but I was willing to sacrifice all the space and all my stuff because it was on the beach. Mm-hmm. And I had a lovely view. I met people, and I valued that experience over shopping and what that could bring me. Yes. And I think if you're considering this life, you really have to consider that as a way of life. You can't have a lot of stuff. I still feel like I play Tetris with my things all day long. My closet, we have a pretty big closet too, and my husband is 6'5". His clothes are very large. So in the closet, you know, you kind of have to push him back and close the door at the same time, and then it pushes my clothes to the other side. So if you like a lot of stuff and that brings you joy, I would not suggest RVing.
Yes, definitely. Those are interesting things. And I just wanted to tell everyone that you have recently written a book, which is Tales from the Black Tank. So let's talk a bit about that, because I know it's really exciting. And
Oh, thank you.
I've been seeing your updates about it, and I'm really curious to know what it's about. And tell us more.
Okay, so my book is called Tales from the Black Tank, a collection of hilariously crappy stories about RVs. And I actually just messed that title up, but whatever, you'd be able to find it. So Tales from the Black Tank came about because of the RV renovation. It was a disaster. It was a hellish nightmare. I'm not even kidding you, when we first started it. But as time went on, you know, you learn to laugh about these things. With any story, it's like, oh, I got stuck on the side of the road. In the moment, it is literally the worst thing that could happen. But, you know, a few days later, a couple months, a year later, it is freaking hilarious, right?
Yes.
So with RVing, that happens a lot. You're traveling a lot. You're in a home on wheels. Things are going to break. A lot of these RVs nowadays are built lighter, like less weight, but that means the materials are not as good, so they break more often.
Oh, okay.
And I got to thinking, I cannot be the only person with these crappy stories. And so I got to researching, joining Facebook groups, talking to people, getting to know the community, and I realized there are a lot of these stories, and I'm the person to put them together because I like to talk about that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so I guess I should have mentioned, it's called Tales from the Black Tank, and the black tank is where your sewage goes. It's where all your wastewater goes.
Okay.
So because you're on wheels and, you know, I pedal flush my toilet, everything goes into a tank and then it flushes out into a dump station or a sewage, depending on what you're hooked up to. So Tales from the Black Tank, I thought, oh, you know, what a perfect title, you know, because they're crappy stories or whatever. So I got a huge response from it. You know, people wanted to share their stories. They thought it was such a funny idea. And so I collected a bunch of stories, edited them. I put them all together into a 40-plus page book. There are two versions. You can get just the regular version, and then I have a bonus which comes with a do-it-yourself toilet, so you can avoid the black tank altogether, and a couple short stories that I couldn't make into full chapters. But it's got some great people in it, great people in my RVing niche. It's getting really great reviews. I'm finally, you know, I released it a few weeks ago, so the reviews are starting to come in and saying it's really funny. There was a woman today that messaged me and said, I just bought your book. I should be really mad at you. It's Friday and I need to get my work done, but there is no way I'm putting this down. It's so funny. So I wrote the book just as a way to communicate with other RVers that, hey, you're not alone. Like I talked about at the beginning, RVing can be lonely and there's nobody that really understands it. In your real life, you know, I can't call mom and say, oh my gosh, you know, anytime I would complain about the renovation, of course it was half lighthearted, but she would say, you know, you've got to get an apartment. That's crazy. What are you doing? But this was something for my community to let them know, like, hey, we're all in this together. And like, isn't it kind of funny?
Of course.
So that's the book.
That's wonderful, and we'll share the link of the book in the this. And if anyone wants to download it and read it and find out more about the RV life, this would be perfect way for them to find out what's the flip side of RVing. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you so
just
much.
yeah, sorry. I just felt like if you look up RVing right now, if you look at all these websites and blogs and YouTube channels, I feel like it goes one way or the other. You can either
Uh-huh.
get the Instagram, like, wow, look at my life, isn't it so amazing? These pictures are awesome, sign up now or whatever. Or
Yeah.
you get the do it yourself, like, here's how I renovated my RV, here's how you flush your tanks, here's how you do this, do that.
Yeah.
And I thought, for me, as a current RVer, that it wasn't completely representative of what the heck was actually going on.
Yes.
Like, okay, yeah, your RV renovation looks awesome. I also did an RV renovation and it looks okay because I'm not a pro.
Yes.
And, I'm stationary, so I can't do the look at my life, it's so awesome. It's the same view every day.
Yeah.
So, sorry, there is a giant cricket right by my audio, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry
We
if you
can't
heard
hear
that.
it.
Yeah, it's just like, that's funny, I'm trying to do this semi-professional interview and I'm literally in a campground with bugs swarming, lizards everywhere.
That's your life, and that's what we are talking about. So that's
Yes,
okay.
so it's kind of a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Tales from the Black Tank was just
Yeah.
like, hey, this is what it's actually like. And
And we need more
if
people
I'm being
talking about what life is really like, isn't it? We need more
yeah,
people
yeah,
saying that, you know what, life can get crappy, but it's okay as long as you find the humor in it. Everything's okay, everything's good, and we just need to roll with it.
right.
Well, pun intended.
Yes,
So,
exactly. That's a good one. I'm going to use that. Just roll with it.
yeah.
That's good. I'm stealing
Oh,
it.
I'm glad to have inspired you. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining us. It has been a pleasure. And anyone who wants to follow Liz can follow her. I'll put her, of course, ID in there and her book. So please view that. And we wish you a wonderfully positive day. Liz, would you like to sign off?
All right. Well, thanks for listening and thanks for having me so much. I love talking about RVing and my daughter. So this was like the perfect passion interview.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who joined us.